Welcome, Boston sports fans. My name is Jake Niezewski. You can call me Jake Iggy or Iggy for short. And this is Bosox Talk. So today I have a very special guest with me on today. He is the host and producer of Barstool's Red Sox podcast, Section 10, and he is also a senior programmer for Bleacher Report with Steve Perrault. So how's it going, Steve?
Everything's good. I mean, this is a bizarre time to exist, but it's a good time to do these calls and talk about baseball, even if it's not going on. It's a good time to kind of break down how we've got here.
Exactly. I mean, I always look at sports as a sort of way to be able to, relieve stress and, not think about the stresses of the world and everything. So I'm curious, how are you dealing with the quarantining and just everything that's going on with the coronavirus and such?
Yeah, it's a bizarre time. For the podcast specifically, it's helped us in a weird way and hurt us. Obviously, it hurts us when we don't have games to talk about, but we've had an interview every week. So there's a lot of, obviously, people aren't doing anything. At least they're at home trying to work from home. Players are trying to just stay in shape. So it's helped us to be able to get the interviews, but it's also just been such a weird, not being able to go outside is so bizarre. And I'm in New York City, so this is really bad here.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's just you can't leave the apartment. You can't, if you go out, it's right out of a movie scene. You have everyone wearing masks, and then it's
Right.
just a very strange time. But podcast wise, I have liked that we've been able to get more interviews, and we're trying to stay as sane as we possibly can.
Right. I think that's how everybody is trying to be. And I actually saw you with your Red Sox mask. I thought that was wicked funny on Twitter. I was actually thinking about that when everybody was talking about the mask. I'm like, I need to get a Red Sox one. That'd
Dude,
be awesome. There you go.
This thing's awesome. This is it's not really comfortable.
Right.
I got it on now, and it doesn't feel. It's.
Right.
I wish this was more comfy. This is really just for show. I don't think
That's
this is really doing that much. But I did. I got it early. I got it early on when this was about to take over. Then I was like, all right, I might actually need a mask, and let's get a Red Sox one. It took forever to get here. That's another thing. Delivery times, understandably, for stuff that you're trying to get, it's taking a very long time. But yeah, everybody's impacted by this, and we're trying to make the most of it.
Exactly. It's crazy. And I actually saw that you guys had on Bryan Johnson this past week on Section 10, which I thought that was wicked interesting because he's a guy that I'm always interested to hear a guy who's up and coming, not only somebody that would really be able to sort of make an impact during this Red Sox season where it's very uncertain where this starting pitching will be. So how was that episode?
That was fun. BJ is he's one of the guys that I've been able to get to know on the team, and I almost enjoy those interviews more. I don't want to say more than a JD Martinez or some of the bigger names, but finding out kind of the process and how much of a grind it is just to get to the major leagues. It is so hard just to get to the bigs. And when you talk to these guys, they have great stories because a lot of times a guy like Bryan Johnson or some of the lower level players don't really get that platform to do a full podcast or to really give you their full behind the scenes story. And BJ's is awesome. He had this story about getting carjacked that I didn't even know. I was like, what? And this was a year before his MLB debut, 2014.
Crazy.
He had a gun pointed at his head. I'm like, this is insane. So you get stories that you never, not only did you never know, but I think that no one ever knew. And That's the kind of stuff I love. Because with a bigger name player, a lot of those times, they've been interviewed a billion times. So a lot of times you don't have these, unknown stories that go public. But that is one thing with BJ. He gave us a lot of great stuff. Broke down his shutout. Him and Chris Sale, only Red Sox pitchers to throw a shutout in the last 3 years, which is kind of nuts. And then him and Pedro are the only Red Sox pitchers ever to throw a shutout in their Fenway debut. So that kind of stuff I love. And you pick up those little nuggets and then you can use those whenever. So really nice guy, and that interview was a lot of fun.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I remember I was listening to a Section 10 podcast this morning. I was hearing you and Jared talking about how you're going to try your best to try and get as many different interesting Red Sox guys, not only players, but just people who have been associated with the Red Sox. And that just somebody that came to mind first, which would be such a unique and somebody that you wouldn't really think about. Remember the police officer with the arms up from 2013? What if you had that guy on out of nowhere? Just the plays that he's been able to see from that bullpen would be insane. Those stories would be so cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the people kind of in that realm that would be awesome. The police guy, I think we had a contact with him, and I don't know what happened. Like that interview kind of fell through the cracks because we were about to interview him a couple years ago. That guy, the best. So one that I keep pitching that Jared just doesn't want to do, or he thinks that he's just not going to do it, is the Bat Boy, who is basically the Bat. He's Batman because he's like 40, and I think he's been doing that forever. Like that. The Bat Boy would be a hell of an interview because they see everything. They're around everything. So the interactions they have with the players, the vantage point they have. I mean, they're on the damn field for all the game like that. Exactly. So that would be insane to get that interview. I'm honestly not against like interviewing like a peanut guy. Like I'd be down. This is when you got to do that. Exactly. Like, this is when you got to do like the random interviews. Like I'd be down to interview like a beer guy from the bleachers like that. I think that would be hilarious because those people have Fenway is just full of history, but it's also just full of stories. Like when I go to Fenway, I think about, I remember game we were sitting over there, this, that, and that happened. And like, I remember we got up on the monster. And so there's so many stories that haven't been heard, and we're trying to get as many of those out as we possibly can.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially being able to have them talk about stuff that you've never really heard before. Like, I mean, especially with the Bat Boy point. I mean, one of my best friends has been a Bat Boy for a Double-A team, which is really close to mine. And he was telling me about how he talked to Chavez. You know, he got a picture with Rafael Devers during the All-Star game. And then like guys like Lucas Giolito, like Juan Soto, like he got to see all these people. I'm like, holy crap, like you're getting a front row seat from all these people before they even become stars. Like, I mean, I think that'd be a really good idea. Definitely.
Yeah, it's a vantage point that you're not going to get from. It's a very unique thing because they're in a position where you're closer to the players than like from actual distance wise than like the manager or anybody else. Like you're literally right there in the action. I'm stunned, by the way, and this is not. I was going to say this is dark. I don't think it is. I'm stunned that they don't get hit more often. Like you're literally right there, and I understand what they're doing with all the nets and everything. That at Major League Baseball, by the way, should have done that a while ago. I mean, I remember occasionally getting down near the field during games, and it just feels dangerous. Like at Fenway, you're right there, like that. You are on top of the plate, and you get a slicer off the bat. You could legit die. So them putting the nets up extended made almost too much sense, and it probably should have happened earlier. But yeah, I am kind of stunned they don't get hit more often. It is weird.
I mean, it was one of the biggest scenes in Fever Pitch. Like, even though it's a movie, Drew Barrymore got smacked right in the face just from a ball at Fenway. I mean, I never really had thought about that too much. But I'm just curious on your thoughts, especially with this whole delay that is going on right now, where we don't even really know when the Major League season will start. How do you think this will either help or hurt the Red Sox?
It's tricky. I think from our perspective as Sox fans, the thing that doesn't hurt is that this year I mean, let's be real. I didn't expect much from this season. If they had made the playoffs, it would have been a win. I think it's tricky with Mookie. Mookie's what I really think about with this year, because if he ends up getting traded to the Dodgers and not playing a game for the Dodgers, that's insane. And I'm not even to say that he would come back to the Red Sox, but like if he ends up signing some mega deal elsewhere and people are walking around with Mookie Betts Dodgers jerseys that like a guy he didn't even play for the team. Exactly. So I don't think there's going to be baseball this year. The more I'm hearing and the more that you see, it just doesn't sound feasible. It doesn't sound like it's doable. I hope there is, but from a Sox fan's perspective, it doesn't really. The thing that bugs me the most is not having baseball, but it's not like we're missing some legendary season that could have been happening. So it doesn't really feel like we're missing all that much, but I'm always down for a no one believes in us Red Sox season. So that's kind of what I thought we were going to get. And it's unfortunate from that perspective that they don't have the chance to shut people up because no one expected them to do anything.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially starting off with Mookie. I mean, that's something that I talk about with everybody that's a Red Sox fan, is that would be wicked funny if we got Verdugo, we got, our future second baseman Jeter Downs, and then a potentially future catcher in Connor Wong, all in this deal where essentially what you brought up, Mookie Betts, he could come back, but we could still see him try and get a bigger deal. But it was actually kind of funny. I saw this article that NBC Sports came out with saying that Dave Roberts said that Mookie Betts loves LA and loves the Dodgers after his 8 games that he played with the team. I mean, he's in love with the organization, and it's just it'd be crazy to see if that actually did happen.
They got to do what they can to try to make it seem like he's, obsessed with the team. And hey, Mookie, we love you, man. You're great. Like, I can just tell the way that you got that soda out of the machine in spring training. I can tell you love it here.
Right.
I can just tell the way that you spit those sunflower seeds that we gave you. I can tell you love them. And it's like, what the hell could you have gotten
Right.
from like a handful of weeks in Arizona? But yeah, I know Dave Roberts, very smart individual. I know what he's doing. He is laying the groundwork for a potential long-term deal with one of the best players ever. I get it, but it is funny. It is funny. It's like, yes, he loves it here. It's like he literally has only been in Dodger Stadium once, and that's the introductory press conference. So
even during that, I gotta say, like I as a Red Sox fan, I had that bias in my head of nitpicking to try and see his nonverbal communication, because as a former communication minor, you understand the whole verbal communication and really understanding people's facial motions. And I mean, you could see Mookie Betts. I mean, he didn't look like too happy about sitting there. Like, he was like, yeah, I'm really excited. Like, and I actually like made a tweet, and it was like David Price, like looking at Mookie Betts. And I said Mookie Betts saying, "Can we go home yet?" Like, and you could just totally see that he didn't look comfortable. But we'll see what happens after this offseason.
Yeah, it's tricky with Mookie because he's not really a people person. Like, he doesn't really, for a guy that is that talented, for a guy that's obviously one of the best Red Sox players I've ever seen.
Right.
He doesn't really like. I think he is, and I respect this. He shows up and he goes to work. Like, he doesn't really need all the extra stuff. I think he occasionally will do media availability things and maybe talk about his cleats and some of the freshest Jordan cleats ever that Mookie would rock.
True.
But yeah, he. I remember we were interviewing JD in the dugout, and that was like that's got to be my favorite interview, just because he gave us a ton of time right before the game one of the ALDS, and Mookie walked in, and we were like, oh God, this is awesome. We could have Mookie and JD, and he's just like, oh no. And he immediately walked out. It's like, okay, he doesn't want to mess with this, but yeah, I think it is interesting with Mookie Betts, because that's honestly what I'm focusing on the most in a weird way, is how that shakes out, considering the circumstances with the coronavirus and with baseball being delayed. Like, is Mookie Betts going to never play a game for the Dodgers? I think that would be insane.
Right. I mean, the biggest point that I thought of with the delay is a guy that the Red Sox got in a return for Mookie Betts and Alex Verdugo. I was really thinking, well, this is great with this delay, because Renicky said that Verdugo's 1 month to 2 months away. So I mean, whenever this season starts, we can see Verdugo being 100%, hopefully. And I've even seen, like, on his Instagram some, and on his Twitter, him just showing how he's still down in Fort Myers, just working his butt off to get ready for the season. But it's going to be really interesting to see, like, especially with all the different plans that are coming out for what could potentially be the 2020 season. It's just really crazy.
It's all over the place. So, I mean, the Arizona thing, I don't see how that works. There's just too many things to factor into it. I do love how, like, it's very clear they're just trying to, like, appeal to the doctors and everything with the plan. Like, don't worry, guys, we're going to have JD and everybody else, like, all spread out in the stands. And they're going to be like 20 feet apart. And we're going to mic the players up, so there's, like, more stuff there. And we're going to have electronic strike zone. It just felt like all this stuff that they're trying to be like, don't worry, Mr. Doctor, like, everything's going to be okay, when it's very clearly not okay. And you're still going to be tagging guys. You're still going to be around players. Just baseball in general, I understand that it does kind of lend itself better than other sports to the social distancing thing, because you are spread out. But you're coming in contact with guys. It happens. That's just how it's going to go. You're both going for a fly ball in the outfield. I don't know. I thought that proposal was kind of ridiculous. I think the Japan thing, I don't know how that's going to work. If that even works, I don't think it will. But I kind of got off track there, because to the Verdugo point, it was so weird how this has all transpired, obviously. But as a Red Sox fan, you look at it like, initially, yes, this might be good. You might have Verdugo might be ready to go. Chris Sale is going to be even more healthy, obviously, than Tommy John. But you think about it from the perspective of, we're going to have a fully healthy squad heading into a season that might start on, like, July 1st. And then the more time has gone on, it's just, oh, good. Not only does that not even matter, because we're not going to be playing, but, like, when is the game going to be back? No idea. So it immediately shifts from, like, sick, Verdugo's going to be healthy, Sale's going to be good, to Sale's getting Tommy John surgery, and we have no idea when baseball's back. So that's kind of tough.
Right. I mean, and it even goes to the point that we were talking about before with how this is sort of like a bridge year for the Red Sox. You know what I mean? It's not like they were looked at as not even close to World Series favorites. I'm just talking about like ALDS playoff favorites or even wild card
Yeah.
winners. You know, and sort of this was kind of like a tryout year. I feel like for a lot of different guys. You know, where will Chavez play in 2021? Will the Red Sox sign back Jose Pariza? What will happen with Pilar after this season? You know what I mean? And especially with terms of just like the starting pitching. I mean, the Red Sox also have like Martin Perez on an option for next year. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities of what potentially could happen. If a lot of question marks, I feel like we're up in the air to start the season, and there's going to be even a lot more question marks if the season doesn't even occur.
Yeah, it's weird for the people that are on those like 1-year deals, and I do feel bad. Obviously, you feel the worst for people that are actually affected by this. Like that comes first. You want the fewest amount of people to be affected, us to find a cure, and all that. And you think sports wise, it's got to be really tough for these guys that are on these year-to-year deals that are
Mm-hmm.
really banking off of every single paycheck. And I love like so many fans get upset, and the Bruins handle this very poorly. The Bruins with basically letting all their employees go, and
Mm-hmm.
that was an absolute nightmare and a terrible PR move, I think.
Right.
But I think what we need to do, and then the Fenway, like the error mark workers, I think they were kind of screwed briefly, and then they figured it out, like they worked a deal out. But people need to really. It's so easy. The easiest thing to say, and everyone loves having this take, is it's just going to get applauded and like, nice job, like get the
Mm-hmm.
pat on the back. Is these millionaires? They got the money. Blah, blah, blah. It's like yes, but like they're millionaires because they earned the million. They earned the money.
Right.
Like it's not like they should be penalized for being well off.
Exactly.
And we look at them as being like, oh, you should be able to give all this. I should just be because I have a lot of money. I should just give it away. Like I find that bizarre, and I understand where people are coming from, where they're like, give it to people that are less fortunate, and I'm always trying to do that as well. But this is not easy. This is not an easy time for anyone in sports, obviously anyone in the country. But if you're trying to run a organization, you're trying to run Fenway Park and all the entities that takes up, all the vendors, all the ticket people, like literally everybody. This isn't easy.
Exactly.
And I think people need to understand that instead of just going with the easy tweet of like, oh, you're a millionaire and you can't. That's just such an easy tweet. That's so easy. It's like, here you go. Here are your likes that you wanted. Like, I hate
Exactly.
that. So
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I was applauding, and when we saw guys like Freddie Freeman, I forget some
yeah,
of the other guys that were just like giving the operations staff, $1 million here and there to really be able to help out. And I thought that was really cool. But like it nobody really knows like when this is going to end. So you can't really even make that assumption if they should do something or if they shouldn't do something because nobody really knows what's going to happen with this. And sort of, researching before this podcast, I watched on Get Up, Jeff Passan talking about this whole Arizona and Florida idea. And he mainly just said, there's so many holes in this plan, but it's the only thing that the MLB has right now. And what you were talking about with the robotic umps, like he talked about it. Oh my God, that was so funny. Social distancing. They're going to be social distancing, so they're going to be using the robotic umps. And then I just thought in my head, I'm like, to the best of my knowledge, they said that the robotic umps were going to take another year because it was still in the
yeah.
trial phase because there was a ton of different, technology issues like when they were using it in the Arizona Fall League. So, I mean, it's just so crazy to even think what could happen with this Arizona and Florida plan. But even just thinking about like what the division could essentially be with the Red Sox, the Twins, the Braves, the Rays, and then the Orioles. Obviously, there's a few AL East contenders in there, but especially if these teams could be, at the divisional rankings of if the Red Sox could get into the playoffs or not, it could be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean that from that perspective, I think it is fair to look at the proposal and actually give it a chance. It's tough because of how outlandish it really seems when you're reading through it, but I also don't want to blame Major League Baseball, which has been very easy for us to do this offseason. I don't want to get too aggressive with calling them out for a plan when it's like, guys, at the end of the day, they're trying to bring baseball back. We're trying to bring the thing that you love back. So can you let me breathe for a little bit? Because that's kind of what it feels like. Like everybody loves jumping down people's throats and being like, oh, you do this, do that. You should be doing this. I could be Rob Manfred. But you just don't factor in how hard it is to run an organization, whether it's a team or the league under these circumstances. It's insanely difficult. And I can't I can't get on them for these proposals because they're trying to bring baseball back. So it's like, you're trying to bring your game back. Yes, you're obviously trying to not lose millions and billions of dollars. I get that too. So throw some proposals out there, and they're going to get ripped. But I would rather that than, Manfred just saying like, hey, season's canceled. Like, I'd rather them at least try to explore all options instead of just calling it all off and saying that it was never going to happen.
Exactly, and especially what we talked about with starting off this topic, just all the different people that are involved, not only with the coaching staff, the players, but especially like the local hotels, the travel, and everybody that works in the stadium and everything. But something that Passon brought up that I really didn't even think of, will all the players be on board? And something that he brought up that I thought was really, really interesting is he's like, for example, Mike Trout's wife is pregnant and is due in August, so. Could that mean that the best player in the entire planet, in the entire sport, might not play because of these circumstances? And then there was also, he talked about that, he talked to this guy about, well, would you leave your family for 4 months? And the guy said immediately no. And then he said he texted him an hour later and he said, I talked to my wife and she said, if that's the only way that we're going to get paid, then I guess I'm going to have to go and do it. So, it would just be really interesting if people, really put priority over the money or the safety of themselves and their families. It'd just be really interesting.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was funny was, I don't know, I think it was one of the former players on Twitter that had said this, but he was like, this plan starts and ends with being away from your family for 4.5 months. I'm like, I don't know if you're trying to get like family points. Like I understand, I get it. Like, these guys have wives, they have kids and all that, but there are a lot of players that are totally fine with being away from their family for 4 months. It's just part of the beast. Like, it's part of being a baseball player. You are away from your family for so much of the year because of how long the season is and how long spring training is. And it's like, I get it. You want to be with your families. I understand. But I thought that was a little ridiculous. It's like, this plan wouldn't work because you wouldn't see your family for 4 months. Yeah, but that's how you're feeding your family. So, like, let's not act like this is the hardest thing on the planet to do. Is it great? No. But stop. I thought that was ridiculous that he's like, that's why this plan won't work. Look at some of the proposed changes. That's why the plan won't work. It's not
exactly after he tweeted that, his wife was probably like, nice job, honey. That was so nice of you to say that. Like, brownie points.
He was going for family points, and it's like,
exactly.
and you got him. But yeah, I read through that. It's like, oh, please, like, stop. It's not impossible to be away from your family for 4 months. Come on.
Right, and then especially the whole terms of like how many ballparks they're really going to use, because there's 15 teams based in Phoenix, and will they just commute from each ballpark? And then somebody brought up something, especially in terms of Florida, if they didn't want to use all the parks in Florida. If you just looked at the drive from Tropicana Field to Marlins Park, that's 4 hours. And then you would have to do double headers and everything, and it would just make everything so complicated. But, sort of what you talked about, this is the only plan that really the MLB has that's viable and where you'd be able to get probably more than 100 games or so in, and it would really actually make a season instead of 50 games, and it's just like half of a season where it really doesn't matter, because all I thought about is people are just going to be chirping this team, whoever wins the championship, like, you didn't actually win it, you know what I mean? You didn't play 160 games, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's I remember, well, I was still too young at this point, but the lockout in 1994. When they were in about August or so, and the MLBPA and the league didn't come up with a deal, didn't agree to a deal, and the season stopped abruptly, and there was no postseason, no World Series. And I look back at that season as being the only thing that I think, at least in my lifetime, is anywhere near what we're at now in terms of no baseball.
Right.
So it was, Tony Gwynn he might have hit 400 that year. I think he was hitting like 394 when the season got canceled. Griffey was having a hell of a year. The Expos, where I think had the best record in baseball.
I remember that. And after that year, didn't they flop? Weren't they not
so that changed their entire perspective moving forward. They still existed, I think, for another. They were still around. The Expos, I think, were around until 04, 03, 04, and then they became the Nationals. But yeah, it changed their the entire projection of their franchise. And you look at this, and to your point, it's going to be like a fake championship. Like, it's not. And so that kind of sucks, because like if you have a team like the Nationals last year that win their first title, and and that was legit. And it now looks like you beat a team that was cheating last year.
Yeah.
Like we know 2017, but like last year's still a little blurry in terms of what we really know. But this year would be a different kind of thing. It would be like a half title. Like I know that's not. You'd still get the whole trophy, the piece of metal that Rob Manfred's talking about. You would still get that chunk of metal. But it would be a little different, and that kind of sucks. Basically, everything sucks. I don't think there's going to be baseball this year. So like I think that sucks. But I think if there is, then it's going to be like JV. It's not going to feel like the real deal, and that just add that to the bag of suck that's going on right now.
And I was wicked excited too, especially if the season did start, because they were talking about, especially with this delayed start, that they would expand rosters even more from 20. It was 25 last year, then went to 26, but from 26 to 28. So we could see guys like, we don't even know what's going to be happening with the catching situation. So the Red Sox could put on, 3 catchers. We could see Jonathan Arias come up, maybe even another guy who could be an opener, like a Matt Hall or something like that, And so it'll be really interesting, sort of the point that you just made. Baseball doesn't even really happen. And something that really has been delayed even more is the Red Sox investigation. And it's crazy to even think that we're still even talking about this crap, because to the best of my knowledge, the clock has been ticking for 3 months. And I reported on this on my Instagram page 3 months ago, and I was almost in tears because, I just couldn't even believe it, because especially when the Athletic report came out, they were reporting it as it was identical to what the Astros were doing. And then even the announcer for the Yankees from Yes Network goes, no. The Red Sox had to get a guy on second base for this to even work, so it's not even close to the Astros. And I was saying to my friends, I'm like, all right, listen, if a Yankees guy is saying that, you need to listen, because, he would be ripping the Red Sox apart with this.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting part of the whole thing. I think it was Michael Kay or whoever it was.
It was Michael Kay.
That had that piece, and I was like, okay, this is good. Also, it's just the reason that was very important is two reasons why that was very important. Because first off, obviously the affiliation to the Yankees, but more importantly, if this happened with the Yankees and you had, I'm trying to Dave O'Brien's not the same because OB doesn't get the same kind of love here. But if you had someone like an Orsillo that was still with the team, or Jerry Remy, if Jerry Remy did a whole, spiel on this really isn't a big deal, they had a guy there at second base, he's relaying science, that's been going on forever. Then that would actually help as a Yankees fan, because you're like, okay, he's talking to his people, and like he's calming his people down. Michael Kay commented, because there's so many clown Yankee fans, and that's one thing being in New York. It's just like the constant, like, oh yeah, Yankees. It's just constantly Yankee fans, and they're all the exact Yankee fan you think they are, just losers. And those are the people that will just chirp your head off. And so it is nice to have them calm down a little bit. But back to the initial point, it's been like 100 days. Like, what are we doing? I understand you're trying to get a season to happen, but you can't possibly tell me, and it sounds like the investigation is done and has been done, so why don't we know? Like, how do we not know what he needs to find the
time to be able to write it, Steve?
It's just like, we were talking about like the dude that has a typewriter is trying to rapidly get through it, and it's just so long, and he's had to take breaks, and it's like we're at the point where I don't even care that much anymore in a weird way. Like, I care obviously, but like I've lost this. It's almost been so long that I've lost this passion of being upset about it, because it's like, okay, when it was 50 days, I was like, this is nuts, and really getting, aggressive about it. Now it's like, okay, this is going to go another like 100 days. I don't know. Who knows when it's going to be over.
Especially when Cora and the Red Sox especially parted ways, that was when it just really hit the ball for me. Like I sort of felt like, is this a joke? Like not all the information might be coming through, you know what I mean? But when Cora and the Red Sox really parted ways, and it was just this huge thing, especially after the Astros got punished. And something that when I was listening to one of the episodes from Section 10 is Jared brought up, well, what about Cora? Like, he's just been sitting here and has no clue what is going to be happening. And it was really interesting, too, especially once this story started to escalate a little bit more and then start to die down even more. And it just really was like, all right, when is this punishment going to start to happen? People were being like, well, Cora's going to be coming back next year. You didn't know. Cora's going to be rehired. This could actually happen. And it was something where, like, I'm wearing a 2018 sweatshirt right now, and whenever I would walk around with this, I sort of got anxiety about it, that people would give me crap. No, they faked that. And then I would always be like, no, you got to listen. They had monitors in the replay room, so they kicked butt in the playoffs. There's no way that they could have done what they did in the playoffs. But I mean, I just want to hear your thoughts on how do you think like this really actually happened? Do you think everything that was reported really actually happened, where they relayed stuff from second base? Because I've read stuff from Freddie Galvis saying that he was going in front of Mookie Betts during one of the games against the Blue Jays just to make sure he couldn't relay the signs. And then we heard Ian Kinsler say, they actually had a very advanced system. So I just want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, if it one of the main things that we had talked about early on was if it was them getting from the monitor, from the replay room, getting the signs, sending that, or having whoever on second relay that home. Yes, that is technically illegal, but I really didn't care that much. Honestly, if any team was doing that, I would not care that much, because that's still stealing signs like legally. Like that's
Right.
still the whole, like that's been going on forever. Nobody's ever really had a problem with it. That's why you just change your signs up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really have a problem with it, like I don't know, you talk with the guy, like you said, you take action and try to maybe block him from seeing the signs. Like it's
Right.
There are other ways to get around that, and players in the league, it's like an unwritten rule that that's not cheating. And so that's why no player has said a single thing about the Red Sox. Like no players come out and been like, oh, that's really ridiculous what they were allegedly doing. And again, we still don't know what they were doing. But if that's the case, I don't really mind. I didn't. When the report came out, I was like, am I reading this right? Like, I think the first tweet I sent about it was, if it's really just them relaying signs from second, I don't care. I don't care. Like, that's, especially if Major League Baseball really cared that much, then they would have had someone in the replay room the entire season and not just the playoffs. So,
Exactly.
if you're not going to really crack down on it, if you're not going to implement any changes, kind of like when HGH was legal until it wasn't. Like, if I can play within these boundaries, and if you're going to let me go in the replay room, I'm going to go in the replay room. So
Right.
I don't think it was anything egregious. And that's why not a single player has come out and been like, "Oh, I can't believe what the Red Sox did," because the Astros. I mean, that's insane. You're just
so
taking
bad.
it to a next level by immediately letting the batter know via electronics,
Right.
via technology, what the pitch is.
Right.
That's a huge difference between the guy on second maybe seeing you put a 2 down and kind of get, because that's another thing. Like, people think that if you're relaying signs from second, like, that's not always accurate. Like, you don't always have the right sign.
Exactly.
So it's not like you relaying that means he knows exactly what's coming. He knows where it's going to be. It's more just like okay, there's a chance it's a fastball. The Astro system, it's like they know.
Exactly.
Like, you know for a fact where the pitch is going to be. You know, you have it down.
Right.
And so that's just, so to me, that's astronomically different than what the Red Sox allegedly were doing.
I completely agree with you. It was funny when all this stuff first started coming out. You know, my mom, who doesn't really know a lot about baseball, she's like, "What is this about stealing signs?" I'm like, "Actually, Mom, in high school, I used to be a third baseman and just watch the third base coach go into my dugout, tell my pitcher and catcher, and be like, all right, so you know how I usually say, 'Let's go, Zach'? I'm gonna say, 'Here we go, Zach.' And when you hear that, he's gonna be stealing." And then, sort of what you said, there'd be times where I'd be wrong, but most of the time I was right. And you know, it wasn't illegal. It wasn't cheating. You know, I looked at it as, you know, I'm right next to the guy. Why not just try and decipher his signs? You know, especially in Little League, they do all the different stuff. So you don't 100% know. But, I mean, the Red Sox really, in my opinion, didn't really do anything in terms of really cheating and helping them win those 108 games. Because what people were saying about comparing the Red Sox to the Astros, and the biggest thing that was frustrating me is when everybody was saying, well, you know, they should surrender the title to the Dodgers and all this. I'm like, no, that's just not gonna happen. Like, are you kidding me right now? That makes no sense whatsoever. And it was just something where I was actually, interestingly enough, watching some of the 2017 World Series highlights, and every single pitch that, you know, George Springer or Jose Altuve got these huge home runs was the first pitch. And I just looked at that as a fan now looking back, and I'm like, you know, that's fake. Like, that's cheat. Like you now, you know, and it's just so weird. And it's something, just talking to some of my friends, they brought up this really interesting system that I wanted to hear your thoughts of. Is, you know how they were obviously talking about with the Astros, they had the buzzers and everything. Well, what if a pitcher had a buzzer and and the pitching coach or the head coach or the manager was just buzzing what the signs would be. Like two buzzes would be a fastball, or what I mean, and some sort of that way. Or even if they had like an earpiece like the NFL, where the head coach is talking to the quarterback or something like that. It's just something where now that everything is happening, I sort of like to live my life in the solution. Learn from other things so it doesn't happen again. And so they've been doing the finger signs for hundreds of years, and especially with technology getting a lot better. I want to hear your thoughts on maybe how the relaying of the signs from pitchers to catchers could maybe evolve.
I think that's going to change for sure sooner rather than later. I don't think you're going to have. I don't think you're going to have the actual signs, the actual fingers going down for much longer. Honestly, this not only is this going to have all sorts of players rattled, and it does, and it has them rethinking kind of how they're going to go about their day to day and how they're going to go about playing every day.
Mm-hmm.
This will absolutely speed up the process of having some kind of system where you don't need to put the finger down. You don't need to put one for fastball, two for curve, because it feels a little dated. Like as is, it's like really like we're just showing you the thing. Like we're showing you the play. It's like in basketball, if the coach was just like run play 2, where you absolutely give it to LeBron and everyone clears out, and here he goes. And it's like, I guess that technically still happens, but it's just that you don't want. I guess a better comparison would be football.
Mm-hmm.
A better comparison would be like if you just absolutely knew exactly what routes these guys were going to run just before they ran them. You would
play on a thing. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like we're doing slants. Like if you knew that, then it would change everything. And I think that's what it does for baseball. It changes the game, knowing publicly, or literally just out in the universe, in the world, that you can just see what pitch is coming via a finger or two fingers going down. So I think that will change.
Everybody knows that this
quickly.
is a fastball.
Yeah. It's just universally known. So it's like, I was saying, we had Casey Kelly on, the former top Red Sox draft pick, and he's playing in Japan now. And he said the signs are just so weird because like 3 is fastball, and like so the signs are like reversed. And so I'm thinking, well, this really should be easier to decipher, and it really should be easier to throw teams like the Astros off by doing something like that, by having 3 be fastball. And so I understand like technology is going to be quick and it's going to pick up on what you're doing. But if you're doing that at the bare minimum, then it's going to help. But yeah, I think we're going to be at a system more like you discussed, like with a buzzer or something that's not easily accessible from a camera from center field.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because like one of my friends brought that up. I was like, how have I never thought of this before? Like, and why are they still doing that? Because I mean, when you even think of just like when Jake Peavy used to play for the Red Sox, they talked about how he had eye issues, and Christian Vasquez had to put yellow markers on his fingers. And how do you not see that from second base? Like it's just something where it just makes no sense to me. And it'll be really interesting to see sort of what will happen with all this with all the punishment, with the investigation, what all comes out. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on potentially what could be the punishment for the Red Sox.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've gone through a couple of options. I think Cora will likely get a year suspension, which ideally would just be this year. Because then I mean, that's another thing that's going to be weird. And from the sound of it, the suspensions will still just be like the year. Like it's not going to like carry, like the Astros stuff isn't going to carry over. With like Hinch and guys. And I know Hinch obviously fired, but like he could just become a manager next season, which could end up being no time missed game wise, which is very strange. So that part of it's odd, because I do think Cora will just get the same thing he got with Houston. But it's weird though, because you don't, like, you really have nothing to base off these suspensions off of, because there's never just been like a stoppage of play like this. So whatever happens, I don't think it's even really going to affect him that much. Like as is, I tweeted at Cora, I replied to one of his tweets with 2021, and he liked it. And I was like, ooh, like maybe he's already kind of behind the scenes planning to be the Red Sox manager in 2021. So who knows what he already knows, but I think it's something where you lose, draft picks, get fined, the whole thing. But again, it's hard to project when you don't really know what happened. Because if we actually had the facts and actually knew what happened, then you could have a more realistic projection of what the punishment's going to be. But I just want to hear, just tell us the results.
Exactly.
Like we're not asking for that much. 100 days. The Astros, I think, was 60 something. And they wrapped that all up, and that was way more complex. Like that, you're talking about a system in Houston that was just allegedly way more complex than any kind of second base sign stealing the Red Sox were doing, and yet this has taken twice as long. And
Well,
I
especially
understand
the
the circumstances.
delays.
I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially the delays. Like I mean, they said at the end of January, then they said at the start of spring training, and then I
Mm.
remember they said the second week of March, and then after that they're like, oh, we got some new developments that completely changed the entire investigation, so it's going to be
Yeah.
the start of the season, and it's just something where, especially the hypocrisy that, the gibberish that Manfred said in his interview, when I have time. It's something where it's just very frustrating for me as a Red Sox fan. But especially going into how this could help or hurt the Red Sox in terms of the delay, I want to talk to you about real quick about the starting pitching of the Red Sox, because Chris Sale isn't going to be with the Red Sox during 2020, and it's something where it really is sort of a weird place for the Red Sox in their rotation, especially with a guy at of Chaim Bloom, who is just, in my opinion, a pitching genius. Over in Tampa Bay, he was able to get guys like David Price, Chris Archer, Matt Moore, Blake Snell out of nowhere, and it'll be really interesting to see how guys like Eduardo Rodriguez, Nathan Eovaldi, Martin Perez, and even like Colin McHugh and somebody who you interviewed this past week, Bryan Johnson, can really, help the Red Sox rotation really be able to work during this next season.
Yeah, the rotation's going to be a problem. Whenever we actually have baseball, this rotation ain't going to do it. Like Eovaldi. I think if you're thinking best case scenario, and I don't think this is going to happen, but Erod has the same season as last year. Just knowing how Erod goes, I don't think he's going to do that again. I want him to prove me wrong. I think he'll kind of come back to earth a little bit, but if he has that season, if Eovaldi somehow magically makes it through an entire season, which he's never done, and is healthy and is really dealing and is actually to the point when he has that extra mile on his arm after a full season that he can be effective in the postseason if you get there, that's asking a lot. Martin Perez, a guy that had an ERA of about 5 million last year, he's going to have to be someone that you really rely on as the third starter. That sucks. I actually like BJ. I think actually is in a position where he got optioned or waived or whatever it was, and no team claimed him, and so he ended up back in the Red Sox organization. I can tell that kind of rubbed him the wrong way. Like, he didn't really say anything specifically, but Bryan Johnson should have been claimed by a team. That's a guy that can come out of your bullpen. He can fill in as a starter. He's a versatile player, great guy, awesome person. So it's not like you're dealing with a bad person here. So I'm actually very interested to see what happens with BJ once we actually get going again, because in 2018, he meant a lot to that team, had some big outings, ate up innings where they needed him, and he was clutch. 2019, not as much, but I actually do trust that BJ would be an important part of the rotation in the 4 or 5 spot. But yeah, that rotation's tough. I mean, you lose Sale, as is, you were going to be asking a lot of Sale, and for him to make it through a whole season, which he hates doing. So it's going to be tough. You're going to have to score. That offense is going to have to be just as good, if not better, than last year, which is asking a lot without Mookie.
Right, yeah, exactly. And especially going off your point with Bryan Johnson not being picked up by a team. I mean, if you compare him, I'm pretty sure he got designated for assignment. And so if you compare him to two other guys that got designated for assignments by the Red Sox, and Marco Hernandez, who he didn't get picked up by anybody, which isn't a big surprise. But Hector Velasquez got picked up by the Baltimore Orioles. Obviously, it's the Orioles, but still, to your point, Bryan Johnson didn't get picked up, because I remember every single time that the Red Sox either had an injury or they needed a guy to fill in, it was Bryan Johnson, and he would always, maybe let up 2 to 3 runs, but it wasn't sort of like a blow up where you bring a guy up and he lets up 5 to 6 runs. You know what I mean? And he was always a very effective pitcher, but I mean, this rotation, sort of off your point, it's not going to be anything special, especially with very inconsistent Eduardo Rodriguez, and with Nathan Eovaldi, especially with how high of an ERA he had, even just coming back with 5.99 in 12 starts, and then they tried to make him a closer, which made no sense to me. But when you saw him during the spring training, I actually got a lot of hopes. I don't know about you. I mean, he pitched 8 innings, let up 0 with 12 strikeouts. I mean, it's something where I looked at that as, if that guy's your second starter, I mean, he could actually surprise a lot of people. So I want to hear your thoughts on how do you think Eovaldi will really perform, and do you think his arm could really affect him down the stretch?
Yeah, I think one thing I hate doing is getting too excited about spring training performance. I think that's something that it's all that we have to base off of when spring training's going on. It's like,
Hmm.
this is our only form of baseball we can break down. So
Right.
this means he's going to win the Cy Young. And I do it kind of jokingly, but I don't put much weight into that. I think it's something where Eovaldi has shown you he cannot make it through a season. He has injury concerns. He's coming off of barely pitching last year. It's tough because you want him to be World Series Eovaldi. That guy actually is a Cy Young contender if you
Right.
stretch that out over a season. And it's like, damn, this guy throws, in terms of easy cheese, like X says, this is an easy 98, 99, like easy. Like it looks effortless. But that pays a toll. I mean, you can't. I just don't know how he does that with his history, and not even just the injury history, his history of being streaky, his history of going on 3-4 starts of 1-2 earned and then
Right.
getting destroyed for the next four. So I don't know if we can rely on him that much. I think Erod is the biggest staple in the rotation, a guy that is really treating this upcoming season, treated last season like it, but treating like he wants to be treated like an ace. And you have to earn that. You don't just get treated like an ace for having a 19-win season. You have to do that
Hmm.
consistently. And Erod is in a position where I think he can do it, but I trust Erod more than Eovaldi. I don't know if Nathan's going to be able to hold up over the course of a season, and I don't want to base the spring training performance too much on what I expect from him in the season.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I just looked at that and I was like, wow, you could have thought he would have let up a few, obviously a few more runs, but like I just looked at the 0 runs as like a big deal, especially for Evaldi coming off of that horrendous season last year. But I just wanted to get your thoughts lastly on the whole opener position. Do you like the whole idea? I mean, Heim Bloom came over, like I talked about, from the Rays, and he was actually the orchestrator with the Rays of this whole sort of opener idea, and it was actually kind of interesting. My grandparents live down in Tampa, so I've gone down to Tropicana to watch a lot of different Rays games, and there's multiple times where obviously they have a guy come in for 2 innings, and then the next inning there's a new guy in, and it was just funny, like trying to describe it to my grandparents about he's like, wait, don't they usually go for 5 innings? I'm like, no, you're gonna understand, it's because they don't have the scouting report. It's because they're trying to mess with the hitters and everything. And so, especially with the Red Sox having a few options for the opener position, and especially a lot of concerns about just the rotation in general. We could have guys like Colin McHugh, Ryan Weber, your guy Bryan Johnson being in an opener position. So I just want to hear your thoughts on, if you like it or not, and could it work for the Red Sox?
I personally have hated the opener for a while. It's weird. I think it's
It's
something
weird.
that the Red Sox could benefit from, just considering that they don't have a lot of numbers. You almost are forced into doing it because you just don't have enough arms. You don't have enough guys that are full season starters. And so I think they're almost don't have an option, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to like it because it's something where they're almost at a necessity going to have to do it. And it's something that I think as a fan is just weird. It when Tampa's in town, you get it every time. Um, and I understand they've it's worked for them to a certain degree, but it also just puts so much weight on your bullpen. These guys are going to get worn down more. You only have starter going 3 innings.
Right.
So I don't love it personally, but I also totally understand why they would need it and why they're almost going to have to be forced into doing it because you just
Hmm.
don't have enough guys that can go deep. You don't have 6 starters. You don't even have 5. So with Sale going down, the only real reliable guys that you have are like Eovaldi, Erod, Perez, and BJ, and I guess
Right.
McHugh. But um, I hate it, but it's going to have to happen, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a very weird idea in my opinion, and it was something where it makes sense obviously for the Red Sox right now, but just for the future, if we're able to have 5 steady guys that are able to go and really be able to be consistent, because just in terms of playoffs, that's not going to work in the playoffs. You need to be able to have those good viable bullpen guys when you need those good bullpen guys, not just to fill in every 2 to 3 innings. You know what I mean? And it was just something where I looked at this as it'd be great for this season, but in the future, I would love if we could go a different route. And so we've talked a lot about this throughout this podcast, Steven. I just wanted to get your final thoughts on a definitive answer. Do you think that there will be baseball in 2020?
I don't, which sucks.
Yeah.
Like I was talking with my dad about it today, and we're obsessed with baseball and the Red Sox and the whole thing, and I just don't see, and I know we talked about it, but between the Arizona plan and the Japan plan, they're just not going to work. So I applaud Major League Baseball for trying to make a season happen, and they're going to keep doing it, which is the right thing. I don't think people that are like, oh, this is ridiculous. It's like, whatever, dude. They're trying to bring baseball back. So let's
Right.
not like lose our minds about how they're doing it. I just don't think anything really makes sense. Fauci the other day was saying he doesn't think that we're going to be back to any form of normalcy until November at the earliest. That's not
Crazy.
promising. All the reports that you're going to see about Major League Baseball over the last month were like, oh, well, the players are okay with playing in November and December, and I already think that that's bizarre. That
That's
also then
crazy.
screws you for next year. Like you're talking about messing up the entire calendar year for 2020 and 2021. That
Hmm.
would completely change the entire. It's 2 seasons you're messing with, which is, do you bite the bullet, cancel the season, and try to do everything you possibly can for normalcy in 2021? I think they're already talking about that, and I think it's something that, as a baseball fan, I'm not that against, because you don't want to lose a season or have like a fake weird season
Right.
and then have it mess with another season. And then we're talking about potentially not having normal baseball until 2022, which
That's
feels like it's
crazy.
like 80 years away. That sounds so futuristic, but that is something that might actually happen.
Right.
And I would way rather sacrifice this year and have a normal one next year than do some funky stuff that goes into Christmas and have an even weirder 2021. So I don't think there's going to be baseball this year. That sucks, but I
Right.
think in the long run, it is for the best.
Come on, you don't want, instead of the NBA, the Yankees Red Sox Christmas showdown. Like that would be crazy. But I completely agree with you. I didn't even think of the whole fact that would screw up all of off season. Like
Yeah, it
it would
messes
just
everything up.
blow everything up. And so, it would be really interesting to see what will happen, not only with baseball, but with just sports in general and just normalcy, like with life in the United States in general. It'll be all really interesting. And so, Steve, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. And for everybody who has not yet, go out and check out Section 10 podcast by Barstool, and also go over to Twitter and follow Steve. It's Steve_Perrault. And so I hope you stay safe and healthy, and you have a great rest of your Easter. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This was awesome. It is nice to talk about baseball when we can just kind of act like it's not gone forever,
Right.
which it really now it kind of feels like that. But no, I appreciate you having me on. Let's actually do this again when there's baseball. Let's do that.
Absolutely. I hope so. And hopefully we can talk about a lot more exciting stuff.